Welcome back to Cooking at the Lake. I'm Mary Jane Warner, and we're here again in my home. And this time we have a special guest, Gary Sellick, who is a doctor of history at Monticello. And today, and you're from?
Plymouth, England.
There we are. And so Gary is going to teach us this fabulous recipe. What are you going to cook for us today, Gary?
Today I'm going to cook Cornish pasties, which is a traditional recipe from my county in England where I come from.
Oh, that sounds exciting. Now today the ingredients that we're going to use are, we need flour and some butter. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And then a little water because we're going to make some pastry. Is that correct?
Yeah, and it's important when we go for the butter that you go for unsalted butter. We're going to add a little bit of salt later to the recipe, and so we don't want to have too much salt, so it will overwhelm the power of the dough, which we're going to be making mainly with a butter crust.
Okay, all right. Would have been good to know before I bought the butter, but that's okay. One mistake down. We also are going to make the ingredients for the inside of the pie, and we're going to need carrots, a potato, an onion, and a couple of spices. Is that correct?
Yeah, they're all herbs, so you're really going for British traditional herbs. Rosemary, thyme, if you've got any, basil. I go for oregano, or oregano, which isn't traditionally put in a pasty, but I find it complements the other herbs very well. One other thing is, in a traditional Cornish pasty, if you're going to go really traditional, you'd have rutabaga, or as we call it in England, swede. But some people don't like swede, so I've decided to go against it today.
Okay.
But bear in mind, if you want to go traditional, always put in your swede.
Will do, will do. Okay, now some of the things we have cut. Now, Gary, would you go ahead and show us how big you would like the meat slice to go into the pastry?
Surely, so you'd want basically any type of steak you can get. It could be the cheapest kind of steak that's on the shelf, a piece of chuck, a shoulder, rump, any kind of steak. And you want to cube it to something roughly this size, diced to maybe a little bit smaller than your standard casino dice. Oh. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to cut up a few pieces of this.
Okay.
And we're going to do it to the same size. Now, if you can, when we get to the vegetables in a minute, the vegetables are going to be only slightly smaller.
Okay.
And the reason for that is, of course, it has to fit in the pie. And it all depends, of course, on the amount of flour that you're using. If you're using more flour, you make more pastry, you can make the pasties bigger. The pasties I'm making today would, in Cornwall, probably be a small to medium-sized pasty. They get up to extra large.
Oh,
so
wow.
they can double the size of what we're going to be making.
I guess
today.
it depends on, too, how hungry you are.
Absolutely
you pick the big ones, but this looks wonderful so far.
And in terms of fat, it's a matter of preference as well. You can use the fat of the meat. You don't have to just go for the rest of it, the real. Okay. So if you want to go for more lean, you can. If you want to go for a more fatty cut, you absolutely can use that as well.
Okay. And that should be about enough meat for one of our pies for today. So we're going to put this over here for a second. Now, the potato. When we cut up the potato. Is that about the right size?
Yeah, so again, these are going to be smaller than the pieces of meat that we've seen. So if you have a look at that, you'll be able to see that these are cut into reasonably small cubes. If you have a cuber at home to cut your own vegetables rather than using a knife and doing it by hand, it will basically make the right cube as long as it's smaller than the meat that we've got here. So,
and have we got the right size here on carrots?
Yeah,
do you think?
carrots again, you just want to cut it small so they fit in the pie. Nothing too exciting or crazy going on here. You're just cutting it into your regular little slices. Then you're going to basically halve the slices and quarter them.
Okay, and that sounds great. Okay, well, let's go ahead and put some of these in the bowl so we can make our ingredients, and then we'll get to the pastry.
Absolutely. So what you're going to do is you're just going to put all of the potato, all of the carrots, half of an onion, and the onion is cut in exactly the same way as the carrots and the potatoes, so sliced pretty small. Some recipes call for whole onions.
Yes.
If you put too much onion in, it really overpowers everything, so steer clear.
And there's some spices for you.
Yeah, so again, you don't want to over-herb everything. You just want to have a little bit, a sprinkling. The real flavour is going to come from the vegetables and the meat, not so much from the herbs. The herbs really just accentuate the flavors that we already have going.
I see. Now, how did you learn this recipe, and what's the origin of the recipe?
I mean, so Cornish pasties are a traditional recipe going back to Cornwall and Devon, where I'm from, hundreds of years. The real traditional story of the pasties, for those of you like Poldark and know anything about Cornwall, you'll know that the history of Cornwall was very much dependent on tin and the...
Let me get you a spoon.
Thank you very much. And so all I'm doing now is putting a little bit of salt to flavour, nothing too much, and then a little bit of pepper to do the same.
Okay. And some of these spices are from my pots out on the patio. So the oregano, not, but the sage is. Yeah.
As well. So yeah, so the Cornish miners would go down their mines. And the problem with going down your mines when you have your lunch, and you spend the whole day down the mines. And these mines aren't like the large industrial mines of America in the 19th century. These are very thin passages, and they're really after tin and copper. And they'd go down there, and when digging around, they'd get arsenic in their fingertips.
Oh.
So it was a very dangerous place to be. Cave-ins, explosions, poison in your fingertips. So you couldn't mess around with your food. And so the Cornish wives, or miners' wives, used to create pasties as kind of a catch-all, like a hot pocket of traditional salts to basically get your entire meal for the day inside a pastry.
Oh, wow.
So all your vegetables, all your meat would go in there. And what they'd do is they'd fold it, and we're going to crimp on top today because I find that an easier method. But you'd normally crimp to the side of the pasty, and that way the miners could hold the pasty, eat the interior, and then throw away the crust without getting that arsenic in their food.
Wow, those wives were wonderful, weren't they?
Oh, they certainly
Save their husband. And then we're going to put the meat in, is that correct?
That's
and
correct.
then you've got a spoon here.
So, and as much as, yeah, so there we are. And so everything's just in together, and that's going to be the filling. And if you can see in there, it's really just a hodgepodge of meat, potatoes, carrots, onions.
Excellent.
Nice and easy.
Excellent.
And if you want, and I'm a big fan of this, get your hand in there, really mix it up. And that will really get those spices mixed around. You don't want to have too much meat in one place. If you can find a big clump of meat, break it up. And that's it. And then we got a nice mixture in there.
Well,
so,
isn't that what makes homemade, is getting your hands in there?
Oh, absolutely.
I love that. That's great.
So that's the filling.
Here.
Filling is done and put aside, right?
Yes.
So now we're going to move on to the thing that most people get scared of, right? Which is
I do.
pastry.
You're a brave man.
Yeah, I think that a lot of, it's becoming more of a thing, but I find that men stay away from baking because they're scared of getting things wrong. And I'm going to tell you how to do this very simple pastry that anyone can do.
Do men get things wrong?
Occasionally. Yeah, very rarely, but sometimes.
I don't think so in my house, according to my husband, that's for sure. Well, that sounds good. Let's see what this is all about.
So all this is 2.5 cups of regular flour. And all you're going to do is you're going to stick that in a mixing bowl, like so. And then you're going to take 2.5 sticks of butter. That's a lot of butter. But you need to have 2.5 sticks because this is going to be the binding agent. You're not going to put eggs in. You're not going to beat anything. There's no milk. It's all going to join simply flour, butter, water. Incredibly easy pastry to make, something that anyone can do, and very hard to get wrong. Even I can do it, so it must be easy. So what you want to do again with the butter is cube it, make it small, because you're going to have to make that butter disappear inside this flour. The smaller it is, the quicker it goes.
Okay.
So what you'd want, so I'm just going to take some of this and I'm going to scatter it around. You want to scatter it around because all of the flour is going to have to be touched by this butter.
Okay. All right.
So take it, scatter it around. Once you've got a layer on top, move the flour around a little bit, put some more in the bottom, that kind of thing.
That sounds good. Well, you seem like you know your way around pastries, that's for sure. I love this.
Yeah.
I hope my husband watches this show because that would be great to watch this happen. Now, tell us a little bit more about what you do at Monticello.
Yeah, so I got my degree in history at the University of South Carolina and got my doctorate there. studying the Revolutionary War, and I now work at Monticello, the papers of Thomas Jefferson retirement series.
Wow.
We are basically turning his retirement era correspondence, literally thousands of documents to do with his life after the presidency, after 1809, into books, and we're producing roughly one a year. And that's roughly 600 documents of volume. So,
oh my gosh.
It keeps us busy.
How long do you think that'll take?
Well, the plan is to finish by 2026 or 2027.
Oh.
And that's just the retirement years. The Princeton papers, which are the rest of his life, are going to go probably a little bit on the other side of that. So,
Wow.
and they've been going for over 100 years by that stage. So.
Wow. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Now, what got you interested in Jefferson in the first place?
Nothing, really. I'm not a big, I wasn't a big Jefferson fan, not like, didn't dislike the guy.
Yeah.
But I had nothing to do with Jefferson. Literally, the job came up and I worked on an editing project in South Carolina. And so the job came up, it matched what I was already doing. And so I thought,
well, sometimes you fall into these things, don't you?
you certainly do. And I'm grateful. It's fantastic work. I thoroughly enjoy it. And I feel like we're doing some good,
Yes.
Historians will be using our edited volumes for decades to come.
That sounds wonderful. Now, I love watching Poldark because, well, number one, the lead man is not hard on the eyes. And then, but the scenery is so beautiful.
Yeah.
So, did you go to the beach there? Because, they have beaches there.
Yeah, so, Poldark is filmed entirely in Cornwall. And if you go to Cornwall, you'll be able to see extant mines all over the place. You can find those in Devon as well. I live in Plymouth. I lived, I should say, in Plymouth, which is famous for its own degree of history, of course, with the Pilgrims and the Mayflower and Sir Francis Drake. But if you go up on Dartmoor, famous for Hound of the Baskervilles,
Oh, yes.
which is only 10 miles from Plymouth, you'll be able to find extant tin mines there as well. So it isn't just a coastal thing. They're everywhere. But and you'll be able to go and find them. There's hardly any working tin mines in Cornwall now.
Oh.
Like most mining in England, it's pretty much
Now,
been
did you
wiped
just tell me the ending of the story of Poldark? Because one of the things that he's trying to do is get the mines going. But, well, what replaced the economy or what they did?
Tourism. Devon
Oh.
and Cornwall are now very well known for their beaches, and they've got a what do we call it? Not tropical, obviously,
No.
but it's a climate which allows palm trees to grow and things like that.
No.
Yeah, Devon's part of Devon, the Torquay part, is known as the English Riviera.
No.
It's a fact. We're trying to cash in on the French.
Well,
So all I'm doing now
I think you might need a little bit more butter. So let's get a knife out and give you a little bit more butter.
Yeah, so all I'm doing now, I'll show you while Mary Jane's cutting the butter, is I'm literally just squeezing the butter and mixing it with the rest of the flour. So very nice, very simple. And that's going to make clumps. You want to break those clumps up. And you want to really get in there. And you're never going to break all the clumps. So don't be scared if like these butter clumps stay there. Because when you roll it out, they're going to be crushed. But you really want to break them up as much as you can and cover them in flour.
Okay, I have a little bit larger clumps than what you have, but no recipe is perfect, right? There we go. There we are.
That's fine. Now you can use your hands like I do. Once again, just a tactile kind of guy. I love getting in there and really getting the mixture right.
That butter.
But you can use a food processor and pulse it. That's absolutely fine as well.
Yes, yes.
And you want to pulse it to the extent that everything starts turning a little bit yellow and everything's going to start looking like breadcrumbs.
Okay.
And when you're there, you'll know you're pretty much there with the dough. And then we've just got one more ingredient to add, and that's water, and that's going to be very simple. So I'm just going to keep going at this for a couple minutes.
Okay.
And then once it's at the right consistency, I'll show you, and then we can just move on.
It does sort of look a little like cornmeal at this point.
Yeah, that's kind of what it does look like. It does look like. It's got the colour of cornmeal, and eventually you want it to have almost the consistency. It's never going to be that fine.
Okay.
Because you're breaking up large pieces of butter. But as you can see, the butter's starting to disappear.
Yeah.
Into smaller and smaller clumps. Considering, like, for example, the ones you gave me are pretty big, but now starting to disappear.
You're work magic. That's all there is to it.
Oh, there we are.
Now, how long have you made this recipe? Did you start as a child?
Oh, certainly not. No, I started really going into the world of Cornish pasty making.
Wow, you make it sound so grand, and it is. I
Yeah,
bet.
the world of pasty making when I moved out here because I missed home and some of the food of home, and so I thought, you know what, this is something I can replicate, and I found a pretty decent recipe. I found another decent recipe. I started tinkering around until I made my own recipe, and that's what we got today. So what you're getting now is straight out of Gary Sellick's noggin.
Sounds good. Well, to be continued. We'll see.
Yeah, right. Yeah. We'll see if it's we'll see if it ends up good. Hopefully it will. This is going to be an absolute
We'll just have to cut and go buy some pasties and come back and
that's right.
And say, oh, these are so good.
Incidentally, fun fact.
Yes.
Cornish pasties, possibly actually invented in Devon.
Really?
Not Cornwall. Devon is the next county over from Cornwall. The first use of the term pasty was by a knight in the 1200s from Plymouth.
Really?
Oh, just outside, yeah. So they've kind of got the name on it, but us in Devon, we make them just as good.
I understand.
Okay, so there we are. We've broken it down, and I'm quite content with that.
Let's tilt it a little bit so you can see a little bit.
So you're going to see it's going to almost have the consistency of cornmeal. There'll be a couple big clumps. It's fine. That'll disappear. And that's it, though. It's basically broken down. You'll know you're right when the flour is more of a yellow than the white it was beforehand, because that's the butter really joining in with the flour. And that's what's going to be necessary to make this hold. If it's a bad batch, it's going to be too damp. And if it is a little bit damp, incidentally, when I pour this water in, you might see this. Because half a cup of water, it's nothing. But when you mix it all together, it's really going to start to clump together pretty quick here. And you just really want to get all that water on all the pieces of dough. Now, Mary Jane, if you wouldn't mind just powdering the powdering the counter just a little bit.
I might have done a little more than a little bit, but that's okay. We can clean it up later, right?
Fine. So here we go. We've got a clump of dough right here. Doesn't look like much right now, but we're going to need that in a minute. We're going to get it all out, and we're going to all stick it together. Now, this is going to be a damp dough. When it comes out, it will be moist. Don't be concerned if it doesn't come together and it isn't rollable immediately. It's not supposed to be. You're going to really play with this. You're going to add flour to it as need be to really thicken it up until we have almost like a bread dough, something that's more stringy and malleable.
Okay.
So right now we've got this, and as you can see, look, it's not really doing anything. It's sticky. It's sticking to the counter. It's not doing much good. So what you want to do is get some of that flour out. There we go. Put it in, and we're just going to do that a few times until you start to see that stickiness disappear. Now that might take a little bit of time, no more than a couple minutes, and then you should be there. If you've got it totally wrong, don't worry. 2.5 cups of flour, half a cup of water, 2.5 sticks of butter, you can make a new batch. But there we go, see, now it's holding together better.
Lovely.
I'm not quite content with it yet, but it's almost there. Now you're going to be little bits that stick up, you want to take that, put it back on.
Let's put a little bit more flour on the edge that you can use if you need it.
Perfect.
Okay.
But we're almost there with this now.
Okay.
Just a little bit more. And it will almost be like a dry top and a moist underneath, so make sure you really get in there and get it going.
Okay. Now, I know you have a little girl.
I do.
And she's about 5, isn't that correct?
She is 5 next month, yeah.
Oh, how exciting. Now, does she help you make these?
She loves helping to bake. Yesterday she was making pear cakes with her mum.
Oh.
She does help me occasionally with the pasties.
Uh-huh.
But it's a little bit labor intensive for a 5-year-old at this stage.
I know. And it's a little messy, too.
So,
you'd have flour everywhere, wouldn't you?
So there it is.
Now, do you use a rolling pin?
Yeah, we certainly do.
Okay.
So there we are. That is roughly the dough as you want it to be.
Okay.
And what you're going to do is you're going to roll it to about 1/8 of an inch.
Okay.
Now you need it to be that thick because otherwise the stuff we're going to put inside is going to start falling out.
Okay.
So we're going to roll it reasonably thin, and then it's going to, and then as you can see, it's going to hopefully be able to handle having...
put a little flour on your rolling pin too.
Yeah,
Have you ever
by all
done
means.
that?
I've done it before, but I find in this case...
Oh,
sometimes
here, I'm telling you how to do it. I apologize.
Oh, you're fine.
I'm always that way, though.
And baking, as I always say, is an individual trait. You can do things whatever way makes you happy. In this case, look at that. So that's just about 1/8 of an inch. I'm not going to measure it with a ruler, but I'm going to call it done. Okay. And then what we're going to do is nice and simple. Take a bowl, any bowl, roughly 6 inches in diameter, 8 inches. If you want one of those extra large pasties I was telling you about earlier, you probably want a 12-inch bowl or 12-inch plate to go around. Okay. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on.
Oh, you don't even use a knife.
I do not use a knife. Wow. And there we go. That's going to cut out a nice circular part of pastry. There you go.
Look at that.
So we're going to move that over here.
Okay.
So this is still a little bit powdered, which is
here,
good.
let me move this out of your way for you. Excuse me.
And now we get to the fun bit, right?
Yeah.
Because now we've got to make the pasty. So all you're going to do is...
Here's the filling
thank you
back.
very much. Get
You're
the filling.
welcome.
Now you're just going to take a little pinch, not too much. If you overfill, like I said, it will strain the pastry. And if it makes holes in the pastry, it doesn't look so good because all of the gravy and stuff that's produced from cooking all these vegetables and meats is going to ooze out. And so you don't want that. It'll lose some of that flavour. So you want to put a little bit in. Now, that's a very conservative amount. I'm going to put a little bit more in. And you want to have a nice mixture of meat and vegetables. You're just going to put it in the middle, like so. And then what you're going to do is going to fold up the middle. Like I said, traditional crimping would have it being crimped to the side.
Okay.
But in this case, I'm going to crimp on top just because I find it easier.
Yes.
And you're just going to make a pouch like this.
Oh, wow.
And so you can crimp with a fork if you're really into that. The crimping really doesn't bother me all that much. At the end of the day, I just want it to seal. And there it is.
Oh, my goodness.
A Cornish pasty.
Wow, wonderful.
Right?
Let's put it on a cookie sheet.
Yeah.
Mark, will you get me the cookie sheet?
Now, very important other thing. Before you put it in the oven, what you're going to want to do is you want to cut little slits in it.
Okay.
To let steam out. Otherwise, you're going to have an exploding pasty.
Uh-oh.
And that is no good for anyone.
No.
Especially the hungry folks who expect to be eating vegetables and meat inside a lovely butter pastry. So we're going to just stick it on here.
All right. That sounds
and
great.
you're just literally going to just make tiny little rolls. Not too big. You just want just enough to let that steam through without letting the contents fall out. And that's it.
Okay, that sounds great.
And
wow.
on a batch of dough like this, you could probably get, of that size, 6 to 8 pasties.
So you can
now, a pasty of that size is not going to feed a grown man, but with a nice side, it certainly will.
I can see.
And of course, like I said, you can expand outwards. Extra large pasty is going to be twice that big, and it's really going to be wider. Not so long, just about as long, but just that much wider.
Now, I have parchment paper. Is that what you use to put it on there?
Yeah, absolutely. You don't want the bottom to burn. So
okay.
you want to put parchment paper on, and then we stick it in the oven along with its mates. And that's pretty much it. The cooking time's roughly 1 hour and 10 minutes.
1 hour and 10 minutes. And what's the temperature?
So it starts at a nice warm 425 for 10 minutes, and then we cut it down to 375 for the remaining 60 minutes.
Okay.
Now,
say the 375 again.
375.
I love the way you say that. Oh, that's great.
You're gonna, it might not take an hour. You want to keep an eye on it and just watch. And when it gets to that golden brown that you really want a pie to look at, that's when you know you've hit the money. Ooh. But you don't want to go too short either, because bear in mind, all of your ingredients are being cooked within the pasty.
Oh, that's
you
true.
want that meat to cook, you want those vegetables to be made soft, so you really need it to go to that right time. Oh. So best to overdo it to begin with.
Yes.
So put it in for an hour and 10 minutes. Like I said, 10 minutes at 425.
Okay. Well, let's make 3 more of these, and then we'll stick them in the oven, and then we'll see what happens.
Sounds good to me. So once again, what we're going to do is we're just going to fold it back down.
You don't really have to make 3 more, but if you would like to, that would be great.
Would
and then we can.
Want one to take home?
Yes, we all want one.
And semi-relevant to Charlottesville at the moment.
Okay. All right.
So here we go again.
All right, and then we got to get the.
So it's very simple, right? I mean, this is pretty simple stuff.
Do you think you can make it at home, or y'all gonna go home later after you taste them and then make them yourselves? What do y'all think?
They taste good.
Ah,
If they taste well.
yes.
No guarantees.
Oh, don't say that. We're counting on it. Wow. And look how quickly they come together, Gary. I'm just surprised at, I guess you've been making them a while, but they just really
yeah,
seem to form up really quickly.
It's a mixture of that and just being a very simple recipe. It really is not too hard. So, interestingly enough, it isn't just people in Devon and Cornwall that have these pasties. So, the Cornish diaspora, which are people that moved out of Cornwall years ago, took these recipes with them. And they went to Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
So, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, other places. So basically, when the Cornish mines started to dry up, pulled up style,
Yes.
in the 1800s, people in Cornwall were out of work. So they start to look for work in other mines around the world. And so they went to places like Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, places with active coal mines. They didn't have to do tin and copper. Of course, they knew how to go down a hole and dig stuff. So they went to places, mining regions of West Virginia as well, obviously.
Oh, yes.
And they basically went there and took their recipes with them. So you can actually go to places in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin where there's a history of making pasties. And you can go and get them there.
That is amazing.
And even better than that, in the 1800s, a group of Cornish miners moved to Mexico, in Hidalgo province, just outside Mexico City. And what they did there was, once again, it was copper mining up there.
I see.
And so they went there and they started making their pasties. They actually were the people that introduced soccer
Now, yes.
to the Mexican people. And we know how big soccer is in Mexico.
It's huge, yes.
And it all comes from the Cornish guys who moved to
No.
Hidalgo province. And so they have every year in Hidalgo the International Pasty Festival. Now, pasty is the Mexican word for a pasty.
I see.
And what it's full of is Mexican food.
Well, I've had some of those. I didn't know that their origin was from Cornwall. That's
Absolutely, yeah.
amazing.
So if you want to, you can use exactly the same crust, put chorizo in there, put in some other form of Mexican food that you like, refried beans, anything like that, or corn, anything to break away from the traditional English. I wouldn't recommend it, of course, being
course
English.
not for you.
But if you wanted to do that, then you could follow the Mexican pasty route. So very similar to the Cornish pasty, and invented by Cornish settlers to Mexico.
Ah, interesting. Well, you know, there's a lot of recipes, pardon me, when you go around the world or even you cook some different types of food, French food and Spanish food, a lot of recipes start with some of the basic things, like a roux, for instance.
Yep.
It's really amazing how similar some, just like people, we're all similar in a lot of ways. And the food starts out pretty similar, and a lot of it is just the spices that you put in it. So it's kind of fascinating. Oh,
That's bad.
try something different.
See, the problem is, that's what happens. If you go too thin, when you roll it out like that, you try to bring it up, it'll start tearing. And that's actually a godsend, because you really don't want to be putting food in there, because if you put food in there, it will just tear it as it's cooking. So that's the nice thing about this recipe. It will tell you before you really mess up, if you're messing up.
Sweet of it. That's very nice.
And yeah, you just crimp it with your fingers. Like I say, it's just the same as crimping a pie crust. So if you've got a way of doing it that you prefer, go ahead and do it. And there we are, there's your 4. With that, I think we can put them in the oven.
That's great. Well, you'll do the honors. Here, I'll help you.
Certainly will.
There we go. Just put it in that middle rack, probably.
Yeah, so we're going to go at 425.
Okay, 425.
And we're going to do that for 10 minutes. So that's just to let the crust start to really firm up. And then you're going to dial it back down to 375 for the remaining hour, because you don't want to burn the crust. If you leave it in too long, it will start to get dry.
Oh.
And dry pasties, not so good. The crust itself is already slightly dry. The gravy inside is going to make the flavour. So, highly recommended, whatever your favourite dip is, whether it be something, an usual condiment like mustard, or ketchup.
Mm-hmm.
You can absolutely crack it out and dip it in there.
Okay.
We have baked beans in England, different than your baked beans, but you can go and get them at places like Wegmans and get some
Okay.
Heinz baked beans. They come in like a tomato sauce, fantastic little accompanying dish if you want something really British.
Okay. All right. That sounds good.
Bear that in mind.
All right. Okay. All right. Now, Gary, you went back to your hometown not too long ago, and what did you bring back?
I brought back gin.
Ah!
So when I'm partial to a tipple and it's not beer, and cider now.
A tipple.
A tipple, you know, swift tipple.
Okay.
Swift half. So what you're going to be doing, right? If you're eating a pasty traditionally in Devon or Cornwall, you're probably going to be drinking it with a cider. Now, not like none of your ciders you're out here that's really sweet.
Okay.
But you want a nice, dry, cloudy cider. And you'll drink that with it, and that's going to be the traditional drink. Now, I don't have any cloudy cider, but what I do have is Plymouth gin. Now, Plymouth gin is from my hometown of Plymouth in England. It's the only place it can be made in the world. Has geographic protection, same as champagne. Has to be made in the city walls of Plymouth.
Wow.
And so we're going to be able to drink some of this.
Okay.
All I've got here is just a regular glass of ice with some lime in it. Now you want a lime or a lemon with Plymouth gin. Unlike a lot of dry gins, this is actually more of a fruitier gin. And so it goes well with lemons and limes.
That's exciting.
So we've just got tonic water, so we're just going to go for a classic gin and tonic.
That sounds good to me.
And as you can see on the front of it, it's got the Mayflower, same as my shirt. Plymouth Argyle, that's my local football team. It's obviously I love them very much. I wear their shirts. They've got the Argyle crest on it, which is the Mayflower, and they're known as the Pilgrims.
Wow.
So the connection to America just runs deep in Plymouth.
Well, I'll drink to that. Now, there's a storm a-brewing outside, so this is the perfect time to have a gin and tonic, isn't it?
That is right.
And I think in a minute our
think
pasties will be done.
I think
so.
it actually might be done right now, so you might want to...
Yeah, you finish that up, and I'll pull this out.
This is not my
And
first
we'll-
rodeo, as they say.
Oh,
in these
yes.
parts.
Oh, they look delicious. Be careful, something hot back here, okay?
Now, I also find that Plymouth gin especially goes really well with cranberry. Like a sea breeze with vodka.
That's too hot.
Plymouth gin and cranberry actually goes very well. So, feel free to try that at some stage.
Okay, let me get a plate that we can put these on. Don't cut that whole part if you don't mind. All right. Now, I'm going to hold the cookie sheet, and if you will try to put them on this plate. Do you mind trying to do that?
Means,
Okay.
I can certainly do it.
So, oh, Gary, these look wonderful. Let's serve these up.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, don't be concerned if there's little brown bits on there. You see the golden colour of the pastry? That's how you know it's right. If there's a little bit of darkness on there, like this little fleck here, it just means that some of the juice has got through some of those steam holes. Don't worry about it. Unless it's all over the place, it's not catastrophic, and the taste will be exactly the same.
Wonderful. Oh, they look delicious. Let's see.
Move that out of the way for you.
Oh, that looks wonderful. Let's get ourselves a napkin. You can cut that. Okay. Here's a napkin for you.
Thank you so much.
And a napkin for me. Now, you say you just hold them. Oh, they're still very hot. So.
Yeah, so they're going to be like hand pies.
Oh.
So imagine, in the most common sense for you guys, something like a calzone, or even on a much smaller way, like an empanada.
Oh, and I see where the juice is coming a little
Yeah,
bit.
so
That
that's
looks
not burning.
good.
That's not burning at all,
just
guys.
juice.
The pastry there itself is absolutely fine under there. All that is some of the juice has come out. And you're actually going to find it's going to flavour the outside just as good as the inside. That's what's happened on the inside. So don't be concerned by that. If you go to a pasty store in Cornwall or Devon and you see something like that, that's going to be absolutely normal.
Okay, well, let's help ourselves. Oh my, that's really good. And a hearty meal too. That's wonderful.
Well, I'm glad you enjoy it.
Wow. Here you are.
Yeah, cheers to that.
Cheers to you. Well, Gary, thanks for joining us today.
It's been a
for our
pleasure.
pasties and our gin. That sounds nice. And we appreciate you being here, and I loved all the history as well. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us again at Cooking at the Lake. And if you have a simple recipe that you'd love to share with us, we would adore for you to get in touch with us at maryjanewarner2501@gmail.com. And here's to Cooking at the Lake. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.